Order.
Item 1, resumption of debate on the budget statement.
Mr. Derek Goh.
Mr. Speaker, sir, Budget 2021 comes at a critical point for Singapore as we continue to navigate our way safely into a new and unfamiliar horizon. Thus far, we have collectively fared well relative to other countries in our battle against COVID-19 pandemic. This has been largely due to the leadership of our government and the trust and cooperation of our citizens. Although this budget will not provide as much in support schemes compared to prior year, I applaud the government for putting forward an expansionary budget at $102 billion, representing an 8.8% increase year over year. It is critical that our government continues to take leadership by investing in key areas to help us seize opportunities to maintain our competitive edge even in challenging times like this. Not only does this budget support Singaporean workers and businesses in need of assistance, it is also seeking to boost Singapore's position in the new post-pandemic world through capability building along with strengthening safeguards. It is DPM's message about building a stronger Singapore together with a focus on ensuring equal opportunities for all and supporting vulnerable segments of our society that resonates with me. I support this budget of pursuing a stronger Singapore that is defined beyond the sole objective of economic vibrancy. The reason is that as we pursue transformation in 2021 and speak of a digital innovation-driven economy, we need to keep focus that the key objective is meant to help our industries and our people to harness the power of data and technology, to be future-ready. The end objective is to improve the quality of our lives as well as create better opportunities for ourselves, including those amongst us that are less digitally savvy. If we are to achieve this, then our government must stay ahead of the curve by putting safeguards to assist and protect different segments of the digitally vulnerable groups as we jump into the transformation train. As the transformation train moves fast, it is critical that we manage digitization risk to better protect our public and maintain public confidence so that we can make this transformation together safely. There are specifically two areas that I would like to highlight. They are redoubling our efforts to help citizens strengthen digital muscles to improve cyber safety. Second, to address the escalating cases of scams. As we push for greater digital adoption and innovation, our citizens will find themselves empowered to do a broader range of tasks and services conveniently. In doing so, we need to help them to build more digital muscles, as they will each face not just opportunities, but also challenges. The digital life ahead is fraught with challenges. An Institute of Policy Studies released recently in December 2020 noted that the levels of digital literacy in Singapore is low. More than half are deemed savvy information-wise, did not spot signs that information was manipulated. The Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, or CSA, too, had similar findings, reporting in August of 2020 that of the people who know about phishing, only 6% in the survey were able to correctly identify all the phishing emails that were tested. What is concerning is many felt that cybersecurity incidents will not happen to them, and that less than half installed security applications, even though a majority of them know the risk of not doing so. It is good that our government has rolled out many digital literacy initiatives through the Media Literacy Council, the National Crime Prevention Council, or the National Digital Literacy Program in schools, or CSA initiatives like that, such as the cybersecurity labeling on all smart home devices, to name a few. So perhaps some time is needed for these programs to take effect. And it could be worthwhile for a coordinating body to take stock holistically based on the learnings above. This is to shepherd our population towards greater digital discipline, as well as build a deeper awareness, especially in areas that needs attention, to strengthen digital muscles across our country. After all, in cybersecurity terms, it's often said that we are only strong as the weakest link. A more fundamental issue at hand is that more Singaporeans are falling prey to online scams, losing large sums of hard-earned money. On 9 February this year, the Straits Times reported that scam cases grew 65% in 2020 over the prior year. This is a record number, where more than $201 million were lost across the top 10 scam types. Of this, online scams made up 60%, of which most related to e-commerce and social media impersonation. This topic strikes close to my heart, as in my resident's case, it left him, an 80-year-old, in a despondent state. He lost over $400,000, most of this are his retirement savings, from the sale of his 5-room flat. He had released his bank's ID, password, and authentication token to a scam. The money, it seems, was transferred to Hong Kong, and the police had told him that he's unlikely to get his money back. My heart goes out to him and other citizens who are like him. It is also tempting to say that giving your ID, password, and token is like giving away your house keys. At one level, we need to continue to emphasize the need for individual responsibility and education. However, social engineering can be sophisticated, which is even why savvy people can be duped. The reality is that our citizens are faced with a full spectrum, from simple to sophisticated scams. I often hear people say, what are the police doing about it? Or what is MAS or the banks doing about it? However, at the heart of the issue is that the problem cannot be approached by focusing on a single or a few parts of the digital ecosystem. We already know that it's impossible to secure an email or a bank account if the mobile phone is not secure. And it's also impossible to secure a transaction if the e-commerce website is also not secure, and so on. Hence, the interaction of so many digital handoffs creates complexity, so we need a multi-layered whole-of-nation approach. I believe that while government is taking the lead, consumers wanting the convenience, as well as companies seeking to profit in the digital economy, must also bear a fair share of the burden in protecting the system. Our solutions to scams, processes, actions, laws, and regulations need to reflect this holistic approach. On this point, I have 5 recommendations to further sharpen our approach. 1, maintain our current stance on community education. This is an essential pillar for our multi-layered defense to strengthen awareness and accountability at the individual level. Like cybersecurity, we must always assume that scams will succeed. Perhaps we need to prioritize recovery so that we have a higher chance to get the funds back. Target a national level response time for recovery of domestic fund flows, and push for commitments across government agencies and the private sector to act within the response times agreed. Thirdly, with the target response time in mind, review whether our law enforcement and similar agencies are sufficiently resourced and fit for purpose, supported by effective regulations, since digital crimes are very different from physical crimes due to the anonymity and speed. The economics are compelling enough. With the sizable amount of money lost through scams, we should allocate a proportionately higher expenditure to fight online scams head-on. Fourth, Relevant agencies should develop fraud prevention and detection standards with relevant private sector groups that they interact with. MAS is very engaged with the banking sector, and perhaps we can do more with other sectors as well. Given the knowledge of these criminal typologies, could MHA take the lead as the overall coordinator? And lastly, there is also a need to increase cross-border jurisdictional cooperation to come up with a more comprehensive plan to recover funds as more monies are being lost overseas. Mr. Speaker, sir, the problem of online scam is but an inevitable consequence of pursuing a digital economy. As such, let us make sure that our digital economy has a multi-layered defense against cyber threats that necessarily includes a multi-layered defense against scams. In conclusion, sir, I reflected on Singapore's budget statement for 2021, and I recall my former boss once telling me that requesting for a higher budget just means more work ahead. So I am heartened that this government has shown commitment and leadership in putting forward an expansionary budget to put more effort to help Singapore stay ahead and securing Singapore with the community. Sir, I support this budget. Thank you.
Mr. Sharutaha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. These are truly challenging times, as our economy shrank by 5.8%, the worst recession since independence. This budget, aptly named Emerging Stronger Together, balances the following considerations: immediate need to overcome the pandemic, investing in businesses and developing people to emerge from this pandemic stronger, strengthening our social compact, building a sustainable future, and maintaining financial prudence. Understandably, this year's budget is in deficit as we continue to assist our residents to overcome the pandemic, while sending a strong signal on the need for transformation and supporting future growth. For immediate needs, schemes like COVID-19 Recovery Grant, the $900 million Household Support Package, and JSS-specific, sector-specific support will be a much-needed respite for those most affected by the pandemic. Beyond addressing the immediate needs, I will touch on 3 suggestions as we work towards an inclusive, rapid transformation to secure Singapore's future. Firstly, how do we increase the momentum of real, sustainable transformation in digitalization? Secondly, the need to leverage on workplace transformation as our comparative advantage. And thirdly, to prepare our workforce for a successful transition to support our future economy, in particular, the Green Plan. COVID-19 is a catalyst for many workplace challenges. In the past, there was no urgency to digitalize to bridge physical distances in a country like ours. However, the pandemic made it necessary for organizations to explore digital solutions such as the use of Zoom, e-payment, and e-commerce. We now better understand how digitalization can help make our operations more convenient and efficient. The next step is to move from pockets of digitalization or pilots to fully adopting real and sustainable digital transformation. This will enable us to go beyond the superficial grafting of technology onto current processes and instead leverage fully on digitalization and create fundamental shifts to our business model. Only then can we be fully poised to take advantage of the opportunities emerging from the post-pandemic world economy. It is noteworthy that a recent McKinsey report indicated that 85% of ASEAN companies are still stuck in this digitalization pilot trap. How can MCI, MTI, and MOM work closer together to support companies in driving real, sustained digital transformation by stringing together cohesive programs across ministries to enable companies to build a coherent, successful growth strategy, possibly through a clear operations and technology roadmap from MTI, supported by skilled manpower through MCI's Digital Leaders Program and SG United Jobs and Skills Training guided by experienced practitioners, using MCI's CTO as a service, while training organizational capability to use data better through MCI's Better Data-Driven Business Program. Coming from the industry, trying to navigate transformation is difficult, as this is not merely improving productivity, but this is fundamentally transforming business models. Many companies, especially SMEs, may need help to navigate the multitude of different schemes available. To assist companies to fully leverage on the suite of support packages available, can the ministry consider some form of overarching business transformation support through a mentorship program or handholding to help companies navigate the cross-ministerial support for transformation? We need a more concerted approach to business transformation to help companies gain traction and better navigate the diverse cross-ministerial support provided. For investment in training, we plan to spend 5.4 billion in addition to the 3 billion already spent on SG United Jobs and Skills Package for our workers. Of the many upgrading courses available, many are on digital skills. These courses need to translate into real changes. How can we increase the efficacy of these trainings into driving real digital transformation? One suggestion is to move away from measuring success through course take-up rates to measuring transformation-driven metrics. A tiered approach can be used, where applicable, to provide basic subsidy for attending the course and enhanced subsidy for achieving the improvement. An example is the Lean Six Sigma course, where a participant receives his certification only after showing a $1 million operational improvement to his organization. The pandemic has taught us that for 60% of PMETs in Singapore, our jobs are able to be done anywhere and at any part of the globe. Workers are no longer confined to office cubicles, and close proximity is no longer a prerequisite for collaborative work. Employers are trying to implement HR policies that strike a fair balance between work from home and work from office. Work from home and work from office represents both a boon and bane. We find the lines between work and home get increasingly blurred. Considering new working norms, MOM must ensure that the rights of both employers and employees are protected. Singapore must remain an attractive place to work, and we must retain talent within Singapore. Fair workplace practices and good work-life balance will provide us as a comparative advantage as we shift towards new working norms. Work from home has demonstrated clearly how jobs can be done anywhere in the world. While we debate extensively on foreign workers' quotas, let it not distract us from the fundamental question: how do we keep our workforce competitive and relevant in the global market, especially when workforce quotas are losing relevance in protecting jobs? How can we prepare and upskill our workforce such that we remain relevant in the global economy and not only do jobs in Singapore, but also do jobs for other countries, remotely? Hence, our workforce must be able to compete locally as well as globally. And we must continue to focus on driving best added value with the right skill set, mindset, and attitudes needed to thrive in a remote working environment. Remote working requires a different set of skills for both employer and employee. Clear work targets must be set in order to manage the output of the team, and targets based purely on clocking numbers of hours have become obsolete. Employees are expected to be more self-directed and not take advantage of the flexibility afforded to them due to remote working. While it is important to upgrade our workforce in terms of hard digital skills, we must also adopt the soft skills and a more suitable work culture for remote working. I do not think it is premature to consider how schools can better prepare our children for a future of remote working. Our industry transformation roadmap was designed pre-COVID and remains relevant even in the face of this pandemic. We aspire to be a greener nation as expressed through our Green Plan, and a successful transformation necessitates getting everyone on this journey. It is inevitable that certain industries, like petrol-based industries, face decline, while others, such as clean tech, green financing, and horticulture, sees an increase in demand. Bridging between the contracting and emerging industries will be challenging, and it will be erroneous to assume that everyone can make the transition smoothly. Hence, we need to balance and manage this workforce transition, especially when most of the jobs that will be lost are those of the lower wage roles. While I applaud the cross-ministry efforts for the Green Plan, we need to chart out our workforce requirements and our workforce transition plan. One suggestion is to have our industry transformation map to be updated to specifically include transition strategies for low-wage workers, seniors, and persons with disabilities. Our ITR should purposely feature this group of workers so that the industry can proactively redesign jobs for them in a post-pandemic economy. This would ensure inclusivity even at the point of job design. Mr. Speaker, sir, in Malay, please. Belanjawan tahun ini mengandungi defisit kerana ia bukan sahaja bertujuan membantu keluarga mengatasi wabak, malah memberi isyarat mengenai peri pentingnya transformasi ekonomi dan menyokong pertumbuhan masa depan. Saya yakin 900 juta yang diperuntukkan melalui pakej sokongan keluarga, di mana keluarga berpendapatan rendah diberikan lebih banyak sokongan, akan menolong ramai keluarga mengatasi wabak ini. Selain itu, sokongan khusus bagi sektor yang paling teruk terjejas, seperti skim bantuan pekerja atau JSS, bagi industri penerbangan dan aeroangkasa begitu penting kerana ia memastikan kita memelihara bakat dan tenaga kerja yang ada dalam sektor strategik ini, sementara mempersediakan mereka bagi masa depan. Apa yang ketara adalah bagaimana COVID-19 telah mengubah dunia kita. Sebahagian industri akan menikmati pertumbuhan, meskipun ada akan menguncup. Dunia kita terus bergerak ke arah pendigitalan, industri 4.0, electrification dan tenaga bersih. Dan kita perlu bergerak ke arah yang sama atau kita akan tertinggal. Kenaikan harga minyak mungkin menyebabkan kos sara hidup kita meningkat, terutama bagi mereka yang menggunakan pengangkutan untuk mencari rezeki. Namun saya berbesar hati kerana Belanjawan 2021 mengurangkan kesan kenaikan harga ini dengan subsidi cukai jalan raya. Dana bantuan pemandu COVID-19 turut membantu pemandu teksi dan pemandu kereta sewa private yang menerima $600 sebulan antara Januari dan Mac, dan selanjutnya 450 antara April dan Jun nanti. Rebate ini berserta pakej sokongan keluarga sedikit sebanyak mengurangkan kesan kenaikan harga minyak sambil kita membuat persiapan dan mengharungi cabaran dunia yang pesat berubah. Walau bagaimanapun, saya berharap agar kerajaan dapat mengkaji apakah rebate dan pakej bantuan mencukupi atau perlu dinilai semula. Tidak ada masa yang sesuai untuk menaikkan cukai dan kita juga tidak dapat mengenakan cukai yang tinggi di masa depan dengan harapan orang akan segera beralih ke kereta elektrik. Mungkin ini adalah peluang bagi kita untuk bermula menggunakan kenderaan yang mengguna bahan api lebih rendah atau kenderaan hybrid terlebih dahulu untuk menikmati cukai jalan dan penggunaan petrol yang lebih murah, sambil juga mula melakukan bahagian kita dengan kadar pelepasan yang lebih rendah. Saya juga ingin mengambil kesempatan ini untuk mengulas lebih lanjut mengenai dua perkara yang penting yang perlu ditangani dalam kita bergerak ke depan. Yang pertama, transformasi di tempat kerja sebagai kelebihan ekonomi. Yang kedua, mempersediakan tenaga kerja kita bagi plan hijau Singapura. Pandemik ini dengan ketara sekali telah menunjukkan kita tidak semestinya berada di tempat kerja untuk melakukan tugas kita dengan berkesan. Malah ramai pekerja setempat termasuk 60% golongan PMET dapat menjalankan tugasnya di mana-mana saja. Sedang kita berbahas secara meluas mengenai kuota tenaga kerja asing, kita tidak seharusnya membiarkan perkara ini mengalih tumpuan kita dari soalan asas, iaitu bagaimana kita mengekalkan daya saingan tenaga kerja kita dalam pasaran sedunia. Sedangkan kuota tenaga kerja kian kurang berkuasa melindungi pekerjaan kita. Bagaimanakah kita boleh mempersiapkan tenaga kerja dan memperluaskan kemahiran mereka supaya kita kekal berperanan dalam ekonomi dunia, bukan saja melakukan pekerjaan di Singapura, malah pekerjaan di negara-negara lain. Langkah pertama dalam berbuat demikian adalah untuk mengubah pemikiran kita. Kita tidak lagi boleh duduk berdiam diri dan cuba melindungi pekerjaan kita dengan cara yang sebelum ini berkesan bagi tujuan tersebut. Sebaliknya, kita perlu menonjol dan menunjukkan kepada dunia bagaimana kita memberi nilai terbaik kepada sebarang pertubuhan di serata dunia. Sedang kita bergerak ke masa depan yang lebih hijau bersama, kita perlu sedar sebahagian industri akan menikmati pertumbuhan meskipun ada yang akan kuncup. Sebagai contoh, kita beraspirasi mengurangkan kebergantungan pada petrol dan enjin yang menggunakan bahan api, iaitu internal combustion engine, sementara mengalak penggunaan pengangkutan awam. Kerja-kerja tradisional dalam ekonomi bahan api lebih berkemungkinan akan berkurangan. Pekerja kita yang berkecimpung dalam industri ini perlu beralih ke industri yang menunjukkan potensi pertumbuhan dan kita perlu menguruskan proses ini dengan teliti supaya tiada pekerja tersilap langkah tercicir. Ini terutama sekali penting kerana biasanya pekerja bergaji rendah dalam industri juga adalah golongan yang paling terdedah kepada perubahan struktur dalam industri. Kita perlu mulakan proses ini sekarang, supaya kita berkeupayaan untuk mengambil kesempatan dan merebut peluang yang ada dalam ekonomi hijau yang baru. Generasi masa depan kita juga perlu membuat keputusan bijaksana untuk merebut peluang dalam ekonomi berdasarkan trend di masa depan dan bukan sekadar membuat keputusan berdasarkan pilihan yang selesa atau yang ada pada masa ini. Kita perlu membentuk masyarakat kita di kedudukan yang lebih strategik supaya kita dapat merebut peluang baru dan beralih secara lebih mudah di tempat kerja di masa depan. In summary, Mr. Speaker, sir, I've touched on 3 suggestions that we need to work on to seize the opportunity as we head towards an inclusive transformation for Singapore's future. Firstly, how do we increase the momentum of real sustainable transformation in digitalization? Secondly, the need to leverage on workplace transformation as our comparative advantage. And thirdly, to prepare our workers for a successful transition to support our future economy. That being said, Mr. Speaker, sir, notwithstanding the arguments above, I stand in support of the budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr. Sean Huang.
Mr. Speaker, sir, before I begin my speech, I'd like to respond to Mr. Louis Chua's comment on GST. Is GST a regressive tax? Yes, it is. Stand alone, only without intervention. GST forms part of Singapore's overall tax and benefit system, which is progressive. The government redistributes revenues through a progressive system of tax and transfers. And one such example is the 6 billion assurance package that was announced at the Untitled budget last year. No matter when GST is implemented, the lower and middle income groups will be buffered for 10 and 5 years respectively. In addition, additional assurances were also made that when GST is increased on healthcare and education, these increases will be absorbed by the government. Mr. Speaker, sir, for the endangered hawksbill turtle, life is mostly a journey faced alone. At the beginning of its life, it had to face its own battle for survival. Odds are not in its favor. Eggs are under constant threat by predators and harvested by people. After hatching, it will have to unbury itself and cross the open beach to reach the ocean, all without being eaten. Even in the ocean, life is never easy. What then counts as a good life for a hawksbill turtle? Perhaps to live pain-free, to escape plastic pollution and fishing nets, to find enough food in our depleted waters, or perhaps to beat all odds to find a mate amongst the rare few that remains. Humans are different. We've become exceptionally good at survival. We are in the Anthropocene epoch, where human activities have a significant impact on planet's ecosystem. Humans thrive in societies of interconnected individuals who work collectively. And this collective culture that allowed us to progress far beyond other animals by teaching, learning, relying on one another for resources. It has given humans that ultimate edge. But today, cities and countries around the world are facing a multitude of challenges. Here in Singapore, we are not spared. No one will spare us quarter. We have to fight for our lives and our future. This budget will give us the strength to survive, pivot, and an edge to seize the opportunities of the future. Many have been severely affected by the pandemic. The extension of the job support scheme is well targeted to support our workers and businesses in this time of need and prepare them for a post-pandemic future. We must continue to support our workers, fight unemployment, and embark on a massive scale of education, training, reskilling. We must help our low-wage workers and fight for those who are vulnerable. SG United's skills, as well as the jobs skills package, ensures that our human capital will continue to be agile to the changes and growing capabilities. Job growth incentive is one of the best ways in providing support to our graduates and mid-career job seekers. However, more support is needed to quickly acquire skills that are relevant and deep in their new domains. We must keep our edge, sharpen that edge, and ensure that we operate at the frontier with trailblazing spirit. Why is this edge important? This competition and innovation edge, driven by the same ability to connect, learn, collaborate, and execute, is most poignant for survival and leadership. These attributes enabled the rise of global market leaders. The largest and most valuable companies from the 1960s to the 2010s were General Motors, Walmart, Exxon, Ford, and General Electric. The list remained largely unchanged. However, in the last 10 years, this list would have changed dramatically with Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook taking on leadership roles. What had caused this dramatic shift? Artificial intelligence has enabled the exponential ability to learn, connect, collaborate, and execute. It's self-learning, it does deep learning, ever enthusiastic, ever curious, hungry for more data, ever analyzing and tweaking for the optimum outcomes and executing with flawless precision. In 2020, the total accumulated data in the world has reached 44 zettabytes. This is 10 times more than it was in 2013. You can have data without information, but you cannot have information without data. The goal is to turn data into information and information into insight, and with insight, one will be able to have the ability to execute. Information is the oil of the 21st century, and artificial intelligence is its combustion engine. Are we ready for this? Is Singapore ready for this? Are we all going to be working for a smart machine, or will we have smart people around the machine? This question was posed some 30 years ago, and this 30-plus years old question has returned with a vengeance because of big data. The intelligent age, driven by big data, has been accelerated by advances in emerging technologies and connectivity. In fact, we're living at a time where everything that you have seen, heard, or experienced is fast becoming searchable. Machine learning, a subset of the AI technology pillar, has been recognized as the engine of productivity and one that spurs economic growth. When incorporated into an organization, it provides 360-degree multi-dimensional view of important metrics of the company and significantly improves the decision-making process. The analysis of large volumes of data reveals trends, bolsters the innovation of new products and services, and generating new revenue streams. The granularity of data enables decision makers to drill down to reveal insights into a variety of predictable behaviors and incidents. To cite an industrial advantage will be the manufacturing industry, as they stand to gain the most from the digital revolution. Technology pillars such as IoT, 5G connectivity, and big data analytics are likely to transform the industry into a cyber physical hub, capable of assimilating and leveraging on these technologies. The return of investments would be most evident in the long run, when AI would further cultivate automation, ensure robust quality control, and possibly actualizing a near zero downtime manufacturing plant. Is Singapore ready for such a speed? Future software development will be automated through data. Deep learning will continue to develop future capabilities such as conversational computers, self-driving cars, and consumer apps such as TikTok. TikTok uses deep learning to push video recommendations, and its success has outstripped many other first movers in the market. Over the last 2 decades, the internet has created over 13 trillion in value, whilst AI has created 2 trillion in just 2020. The growth in the value of AI is expected to grow close to 20% CAGR to surpass the value of the internet by the next decade. Is Singapore AI ready? In this information age, the distinction between market and society as a whole, and market and individual, has been substantially eroded. This is because human beings are fast becoming the raw material and the customer. The interesting development is that the raw material in the information age is the human natural resource. It's no longer scarce, but readily available and free. Our behavior is being captured, stored, and processed instantaneously. Services and products are being developed through us, which has come to known as personalization. Essentially, this is a commodization of human behavior. The situation will continue to influence and impact human nature, the future of societies, and new business models, as we ourselves are fast becoming human natural resources. This requires new ways of thought leadership, government policies, and laws. As Singapore hones itself digitally in other areas, it can also aspire to be a leader in this space. Andy Grove once said, technology runs 3 times faster than normal businesses, and the government runs 3 times slower than normal businesses. So we potentially have a 9 times gap. There is some merit to this. What are the existing models, regulation, assumptions, norms today existed because of the industrial age? Are they still relevant in the age of information? How shall we evolve? A recent example is Facebook and Google in Australia. AI, machine learning, blockchain, crypto are paragons of how transformational this revolution will and can be. In Mrs. Lim Hui Hua's latest book, Government in Business, Leading or Lagging, provides poignant examples in a landscape of disruptive technology. At such a speed, will Singapore be displaced? Unlike other sectorial, incremental innovations and creative ideas, unlike existing platforms and ecosystems, AI is a general-purpose technology that has the cross-domain capability to rise all sectors and industries. It can be the tide that rises all boats, like fire, the spoken language, pottery, electricity, steam, and internal combustion engine. It will affect the entire economy. And unlike its predecessors, this pervasive reach into the psychological, biological, natural world can and will alter societies. Imagine a world at the advent of electricity, to have a bulb and a plug ready to plug in and light up the world. or remain plugged out like the hawksbill turtle. In the words of H.G. Wells in his book, A Short History of the World, written in 1922, adapt or perish, now as ever, is nature's inexorable imperative. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the budget.
Mr. Koh Poh Koon.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the Labour Movement welcomes the Budget 2021 measures outlined by DPM and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat to help workers emerge stronger from this pandemic. The extension of the job support scheme in sectors still facing headwinds and the COVID-19 recovery grant for severely impacted workers are welcomed by many of our brothers and sisters in the Labour Movement. The extension of SG United Jobs and Skills Package will continue to support the hiring of 200,000 locals this year and provide up to 35,000 traineeships and training positions. Together with the extension of the wage credit scheme and the capability transfer program, these measures ensures that our workers have good jobs and job opportunities. Over the last 1 year, NTUC's key priority was on protecting our workers' livelihoods. Through our NTUC Job Security Council and the Fair Retrenchment Framework, our unions have worked with management to cut costs and save jobs, as well as train and redeploy workers to sectors of need. Many of us in the House will know that the aviation sector has been severely impacted by the pandemic. At the height of the crisis, Scoot's parent company, Singapore Airlines, had to cut 96% of its flight capacity. After Malaysia announced the movement control order to control the spread of COVID-19 in early March last year, many manufacturing companies had a manpower shortage as Malaysian workers who commute daily between Singapore and Malaysia were unable to come to Singapore for work. Many of my brothers and sisters in the manufacturing sector had to put extra shifts and put in extra hours over time just to keep up with the demands for the manpower shortage. Scoot Staff Union, together with another union, the United Workers of Electronics and Electrical Industries, worked closely with NTUC's Job Security Council and our tripartite partners to match some 300 flight crew members from Scoot to jobs in the manufacturing sector. Both unions worked closely with the company's human resource team to coordinate virtual job interviews and continue to keep in touch with these cross-deployed crew members to support their adjustment in the new work environment. With many workers' jobs at risk, our union's actions help to secure secondment, contract or part-time positions into other sectors of need. NTUC was able to leverage on our strong labor management relations built up over many years and our network of partners to make a difference in a dire situation. I salute our workers for their fortitude and resilience and their adaptability. And of course, our unions who have worked hard to support them in this time of distress. This year, as we prepare to vaccinate our population and emerge stronger from this pandemic crisis, NTUC will continue to pay close attention to vulnerable worker groups who are more severely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and who may face additional pressures in the new economy. For today's budget debate, NTUC's Labour Members of Parliament will be advocating for the various vulnerable worker groups. This is in the DNA of the unions and also in the DNA of the PAP government. We will also lay out NTUC's proposals to better protect and empower these workers in order to strengthen Singapore's social compact. Labour MP, Brother Muhammad Fahmi Aliman, nominated MP, Brother Abdul Samad, and myself, we will share more about NTUC's aspirations and ideas to expand progressive wages and practices to to uplift our lower wage workers. With an eye to our aging and shrinking workforce, NTUC Deputy Secretary General, Brother Heng Chi Hao, will share about what emerging stronger together really means for senior workers. NTUC Assistant Sec-Gen, Brother Patrick Tay, will advocate for boosting the employment and employability of PMEs, especially those in their 40s to 60s. And NTUC's Assistant Sec-Gen, Desmond Chu, will call to strengthen the structure of the gig economy and support for young workers. Labour MP, Brother Seah Kian Peng, will raise concerns on vulnerable citizens who fall through the cracks. A second key thrust of our speeches today is on protecting jobs through this pandemic and beyond. I will share our plans for more pervasive business transformation to ensure workers and businesses are future-ready via the Company Training Committees, CTCs, and the Operations and Technology Road Mapping, the OTR processes. Brother Melvin Yong will share further insights on how we should respond to the work from anywhere and the work from home phenomena developing in our workforce. And Brother Patrick Tay will also call to strengthen the Singaporean core. While Labour MP Sister Yeo Wan Ling will advocate for better choices, potential, and protection for women in the workplace. Let me begin with the most vulnerable and disadvantaged segment of our workforce, the lower wage workers. I will then talk about how the efforts of NTUC's Training and Transformation Group in training of our workforce and transformation of businesses via the CTCs and OTRs has been useful in our collective efforts to emerge stronger. Mr. Speaker, sir, this COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the consciousness of Singaporeans the important roles that essential services workers perform in our daily lives. Nurses and healthcare workers are not low-wage workers, but they are perhaps the most visible and recognizable of all the frontline workers performing essential roles during the COVID-19 crisis. As a doctor, as a political office holder in MOH, and as a unionist, I certainly welcome TPM Heng's announcement in this budget that the salary of nurses and support care staff will be enhanced. Unfortunately, many of our essential workers have incomes at the bottom 20% of all wage earners. Singaporeans question the gap between their salaries and their contributions to society. Singapore National Employers Federation, SNEF, and industry associations that the NTUC have engaged with agree that lower wage workers should be paid a fair wage. Consumers have also shared that they are willing to pay more if lower wage workers can directly benefit through higher wages. At the height of the COVID-19 crisis in June 2020, a survey commissioned by the Sunday Times showed that 8 in 10 Singaporeans are willing to pay up to 10 or 20% more for essential services if the money goes to the workers. This mirrors 2 separate surveys commissioned by the NTUC in late 2020. While consumers are willing to pay more for PWM wages, we too need to guard against companies profiteering from these efforts. To do so, I suggest that a tripartite committee, similar to the Committee Against GST Profiteering, be formed. This tripartite setup could investigate allegations of profiteering and ensure that any price increases flow into the hands of our lower wage workers. This reflects the desire of Singaporeans for a fairer and more inclusive society that cares about the dignity of those who are less privileged. Building an inclusive and compassionate society is also a key thrust of this year's budget. Indeed, every worker matters, and every little bit of effort counts. Ensuring that those in the lower wage rungs get a fair wage must be a manifestation of a more inclusive society. There will always be a group at the lower end of the wage ladder that we need to continually support. It is something that we will always have to keep working on. But starting at the right wage level alone is only the first step. If we just stop there, then we run the risk of wage and career stagnation over time. We must ensure that there is wage progression. We need to address the following 4 areas so that our sisters and brothers can start right and progress well in their careers. First, narrow the wage difference between the 20th percentile earners and the median income earners or the 50th percentile earners. Second, enhance workfare income supplement to provide an immediate uplift. Third, expand sectoral PWM faster to cover more sectors. Fourth, implement vocational PWM to cover remaining lower wage workers in job roles that are distributed across multiple sectors. Let me elaborate on each of these four measures. First, on the narrowing of wage gap between the P20 and P50 via the PWM. The labour movement first championed the progressive wage model of PWM in 2012 to help all workers across different sectors achieve sustainable real wage increases in tandem with skills upgrading and increased productivity levels. Since then, through the combined efforts of the tripartite partners, 80,000 workers in the three mandatory PWM sectors of cleaning, security, and landscaping have seen cumulative wage growth of around 30% compared to 24% for workers at the 20th percentile wages over the last 5 years. Lift and escalator workers will soon also enjoy mandated annual wage increases from 2022 in the fourth PWM that will become mandatory. I will share more on this later. Building on the impact brought about by these three mandatory PWMs, I suggest three further enhancements that tripartite partners can consider. First, include in-house cleaners and security officers in mandatory PWM. Currently, the mandatory PWMs for these sectors apply only to outsourced workers. Our sisters and brothers working as in-house cleaners and security officers are not included in the PWMs. I propose that they should be included in the mandatory PWMs so that those doing the same jobs should enjoy the same protection, progression, and wages. This should be implemented as soon as possible because the framework and the mechanisms are already there. Second, the wage gap between the P20 and the P50 must be narrowed so that the wage and social stratification will not be too stark and lead to social fragmentation. Today, the P20 to P50 ratio is about 0.54, indicating that the P20 salary is only about half that of the median income earner. But 75% of OECD countries have a P20 to P50 ratio of 0.67 or better, indicating that the P20 salary is at least 2/3 of the median income earners in these countries, suggesting a narrower wage gap. I can appreciate that there are different social and economic situations and structures in different OECD countries that could account for these observed differences. But regardless of the reasons, NTUC hopes to see a greater range of salary increases for lower wage workers over the next 5 to 10 years, so that cumulatively, our low wage workers can close the wage gap with those earning median wages in these sectors. Our sisters and brothers in the bottom 20% should not become a social underclass. I hope MOM and our tripartite work group will study this possibility and work on a mechanism to uplift their wages. Third, repurpose the wage credit scheme as transitional support for PWM implementation. Now, recognizing that the current economic climate may be challenging for businesses and consumers to bear the cost of faster rate of wage growth associated with the PWM fully, NTUC calls on the government to consider transitional support measures for companies coming on board the PWM to help with the increased wage costs. Many SME bosses I spoke to are concerned about the additional wage costs that they must bear. Furthermore, it takes a longer time for outsourced sectors like the lift and escalator sector to implement mandatory PWMs because companies need time for current contracts to run out and renegotiate contract prices based on new wage costs with their clients. This means that workers will have to wait a longer period to get their salaries uplifted. I thus urge the government to provide transitional support to companies, especially to our SMEs, who commit to paying PWM wages to allow such workers to benefit from PWMs earlier rather than later. The wage credit scheme has been extended in this budget. I suggest the government further consider repurposing the wage credit scheme as a form of transitional wage support to help companies in new sectors implementing mandatory PWMs. Next, let me talk about enhancing workfare income supplement. While awaiting the wider implementation of the PWM, I hope the workfare income supplement scheme can also be expanded to provide an immediate uplift. I hope the government will consider removing the differentiation of the payout by age groups and base the WIS eligibility purely on income. For example, a worker aged 40 years old earning $1,500 a month gets an annual WIS payout of $1,704. Another worker, 10 years older, aged 50, earning the same salary of $1,500 a month, gets an annual WIS payout of $2,496, an additional $792 more than a worker who is 10 years younger. The 40-year-old worker is more likely to have younger dependents and would certainly benefit from a higher WIS payout to supplement his take-home pay. I hope that every worker, every low-wage worker with similar earnings gets an equal uplift, regardless of their age, to further strengthen our social compact. In addition to the above recommendations, I call on the government to shorten the income assessment period for WIS eligibility. Currently, the recipients must fulfill the WIS income ceiling criteria in the preceding 12 months before qualifying. This delays much needed support for lower wage workers. Shortening the income assessment period for workfare will ensure that we continue to support our low wage workers in a timely manner, leaving no one behind. Thirdly, let me talk about expanding the coverage of PWM to more sectors. So in 2018, the government accepted the recommendations of the Lift and Escalator Sectoral Tripartite Committee to implement a PWM for this sector. My fellow Labour MP, Brother Melvin Yong, has been leading this effort since 2017. Following a 3-year transition period, Lift technicians will be the 4th group of workers to come under the mandatory PWM framework and enjoy higher salaries in 2022. Over 2,000 Lift technicians in this sector will benefit from a more structured career progression and an uplift to their wages. I recall the story of Brother Dixon Tong, my union leader in Metal Industry Workers Union. Brother Dixon is a senior lift technician with Hitachi Elevator Asia. He remembered being rather fearful after being stuck in a lift when he was just 5 years old. To his young mind, the lift technician who came to his rescue was like a super halo of light around him coming from the outside. This has inspired him to join the lift maintenance sector. In the past 20 years as a lift technician, he kept up with the technological advances in his area of work, ensuring that he had the skills to stay relevant. Now, with the recommendations of the Sectoral Tripartite Committee for lift and escalator sector, Brother Dixon and other lift technicians can look forward to 2 career progression pathways, supervisory or specialist tracks, where skills are the benchmark for career progression with corresponding salary increases. The implementation of PWM in this sector will hopefully attract more new entrants for a more fulfilling career, and hopefully we'll have many more superheroes amongst us waiting to rescue anyone who may be stuck. NTUC wants to speed up the implementation and expansion of PWM into 6 more sectors. Last year, NTUC mooted for PWM for the waste management sector. Since the formation of the Tripartite Work Group for Lower Wage Workers in October 2020, the Tripartite Cluster for Waste Management has been formed in January this year to develop and implement a PWM for this sector. NTUC has also been pushing for PWM in the food services sector since 2018. In my recent engagement with business owners and members of the Restaurant Association of Singapore, many expressed support to raising the wages of the low-wage workers and are supportive of the PWM for this sector. We certainly hope to make progress in this aspect over the next 2-3 years. The tripartite partners also see potential in the retail sector, the retail trade sector. PWMs in food service and retail sectors will benefit a potential pool of about 70,000 workers. NTUC hopes that the tripartite classes for these 2 sectors, food services and retail trade sectors, will be set up soon, with recommendations released by this year and implemented within the next 2 to 3 years. The next sector, strata management. While most workers in this sector are technically not low wage, a PWM for this sector can be an enabler for better progression and better work prospects for them. This is because their wages can remain quite stagnant due to the outsourcing nature of this particular industry. This could potentially benefit more than 5,000 workers in the strata management sector. Another sector, pest management. NTUC will begin discussions with the relevant sector agencies on the key milestones for this year to implement a PWM in this sector, which could potentially benefit up to 3,000 workers. NTUC intends to submit our proposal to MOM by mid-2021. And the sixth sector, solar technology. Following the launch of the industry-led career development plan for the solar technology sector in December 2020, NTUC has also started discussions with the relevant associations to develop this career development plan further into a PWM. Again, while this is technically not a low-wage sector, we believe a wage skills ladder linked to productivity and career progression will be useful for this growing sector. Let me talk about the fourth measure, which is a vocational PWM, to impact more job roles across multiple sectors. During my last parliamentary speech on the topic of PWM in October 2020, I proposed that beyond a sectorial PWM approach, the tripartite partners should also look at a vocational PWM for lower wage occupations that cut across multiple sectors to improve their wage prospects. Expanding the PWM efforts beyond the confines of the sectoral boundaries will allow larger groups of workers, such as clerks and logistic drivers, to benefit from the PWM to uplift their wages. The skills framework for these vocations that has already been developed by the tripartite partners, together with Skills Future Singapore, can form the basis of a vocational PWM to be developed. This approach should also form a key outcome of the tripartite work group for low-wage workers discussions. One key tenet of the PWM is sustainability, ensuring that the higher wages are coupled with higher skills and productivity. Training of workers and transformation of business is key. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would now like to speak in Mandarin regarding NTUC's plans to actualize more pervasive business transformation to ensure workers and businesses are future ready. 新加坡全国职工总会在2019年9月成立了职种培训与转型团队 NTUC Training and Transformation， 简称 NTUC TNT。这个专门的团队以工友培训和企业转型为宗旨，协助企业和工会成立企业培训委员会 Company Training Committee (CTC). 此外，职种培训与转型团队协同新加坡科技研究局 A-STAR 一起合作，帮助企业制定商业与科技运作蓝图 (Obstacle Road Mapping), 设下中长期业务策略和工友培训计划，以推动企业的转型。迄今为止，我们已经成立了超过600个企业培训委员会，协助了100多家公司制定商业与科技运作蓝图。这其中大约1/4的公司是中小型企业。去年，为应对疫情所带来的种种冲击，越来越多企业意识到转型的重要性。职种培训与转型团队和新加坡科技研究局一起合作，推出结合了虚拟和混合式的商业与科技运作蓝图 （Virtual or Hybrid OTR）， 利用数码科技帮助企业进行转型。目前已经有将近60家公司通过这种方式顺利地完成了商业与科技蓝图。我们预计在未来的几个月，将会有更多的公司参与我们 OTR 的工作。除了和公司合作以外，职种培训与转型团队也会和商会、商团进行更深入的讨论，研究如何推动行业性的商业与科技运作蓝图 （Sectoral OTR）。举个例子，去年10月间， 职种以建筑与牧业工友联合会和国家环境局 NEA 以及新加坡固废管理及循环协会 Waste Management and Recycling Association of Singapore， 他们旗下的17家公司成立联盟，制定行业性的商业与科技运作蓝图，并且促进垃圾管理业尽快落实渐进式新经模式，让大约3000名本地工友从中受惠。完成垃圾管理业的商业与科技运作蓝图之后，职种培训与转型团队会进一步的与新加坡固废管理及循环协会旗下的各个公司一起合作，成立企业培训委员会，根据不同公司的专业需求、转型需求，制定专门的业务计划。在接下来的2年里，职种培训与转型团队将会与更多的商会、企业集团和行业机构等合作，携手促进商业与科技运作蓝图的运用。对贯彻渐进式新经模式较有共识的行业，例如餐饮服务和零售业，我们会借助 OTR 所带来的推动力，加速渐进式新经模式的推行。让我们并肩合作，共同推动企业转型以及工友们的提升。Sir, I will now conclude in English. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, a mandatory PWM, or for that matter, a mandatory minimum wage, will not guarantee employment for the unemployed, because it is not a mandatory employment law that mandates employment. Upskilling and ensuring our workers have the skills relevant to industry needs is an important aspect of the PWM that ensures employability. The PWM is minimum wage plus, because to the labor movement, the minimum is just not good enough. Why stop only at the minimum? We want to see progression of wages over time through upskilling. A progressive wage is not about charity. A progressive wage is about recognizing the dignity of our workers through their work. It is about paying a fair wage and ensuring that the wages of those in the bottom 20% keep pace with the rest of society. The PWM implementation must move faster and wider, in line with the aspirations of Singaporeans to build a more just, compassionate, and inclusive society, where we leave no one behind. Every worker matters. Together with our training and transformation efforts via the CTC and OTR, NTUC wants to make every worker a better worker, make every job a better job, and to match every better worker to the better job, so that we can make every company a better company. Only then can we emerge stronger with a better economy and secure 3 wins for all round for our tripartite partners, and make Singapore a better Singapore for every Singaporean. Sir, I support the budget.
Mr. Louis Chua, you have a clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Just a short clarification on Member Sean Huang's clarification earlier just now. I do recognize that the 6 billion assurance package does go some way to offset the GST increase for families of between 5 to 10 years. But I think thereafter, I think the reality of the higher GST will still hit them for the rest of their lives. So I think the starting point is then, there are progressive elements in our tax system and regressive elements. I think as what another member, Ms. Wu, also said, perhaps we could look at wealth taxes being another option if we really do determine that a raise in tax is necessary. But I think the broader point that I was raising in my speech is actually, is the imposition of such a tax necessary in the first place, especially amidst the macroeconomic uncertainties. Thank you.
Mr. Sean Huang.
Hi, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'd just like to clarify on Mr. Louis Chua's comments. I don't debate with him on the timeline, on the implementation, but just to say that in Singapore, we need to see the entire tax and benefit system as a holistic system, and that in itself, GST, yes, is a regressive tax system. But when you look at the entire system, it is progressive because of the way it's redistributed. Thank you.
Right, let's move on. Mr. Fahmi Aliman.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, this has traditionally been a time where, as a country, we outline our direction and aspirations for the year ahead. This is especially poignant when the world is still dealing with the effects of COVID-19. I am encouraged by the emerging Stronger Together budget, and I'm certain that I speak for both myself as well as my colleagues in the labour movement in supporting the response of the government in helping our sectors of society. As mentioned by our Deputy Secretary General of NTUC, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, over the last 1 year, NTUC's key priority was on protecting our workers' livelihoods. Having said that, emerging Stronger Together also means being aware of those with additional challenges, such as our low-wage essential workers and our foreign workers, and making sure they have the help they need so that we move together in unison. COVID-19 has undoubtedly changed how we live and work, and it has prompted us to question the norms that we become used to. One of these norms in questions is the value of society have placed on the work of our brothers and sisters in essential services such as cleaning and security. As we adjusted to our new normal, these everyday heroes stepped up despite the risk to their health and took on extra duties such as the additional sanitization of high-touch services and temperature screening so that we can safely continue with our lives. The formation of tripartite work group on lower wage workers is a step in the right direction in acknowledging their contribution to our country. Representatives from various stakeholders, groups have come together in the tripartite work group in recognition of the importance of uplifting our lower wage workers. And NTUC will continue to contribute significantly to this conversation and champion our low wage workers as it has always done. The labour movement is sensitive to the concerns of these workers. We are cognizant, for example, that workers, especially those who earn lower wages, are concerned about their cash in hand to meet their daily needs. The Workfare Income Supplement, or WIS, has been a welcome step, but I would like to once again call for the government to consider providing a higher WIS payout to workers in essential services to acknowledge their social value and hardship faced in the line of work. NTUC is also acutely aware from our interactions with essential services workers that many of them face barriers when it comes to training. This could be due to factors such as time constraints, lack of support from employers, and even language barriers. As part of the tripartite work group, NTUC is committed to finding ways for workers to overcome these barriers and look forward to working with our partners to ensure that any workers who want to upgrade their skill set to remain relevant will be able to do easily. I would like to call on service buyers and service providers to provide ample opportunities for their workers to go for further training and upskilling. By providing adequate support to our workers, all of us will benefit from a more knowledgeable and professional workforce. We have seen and heard about the progressive wage models, or PWMs, have proved successful in uplifting around 80,000 workers in the cleaning, landscape maintenance, and security sectors with its holistic approach. With it, workers have a clear sense of the skills needed to do their jobs and the skills they should attain to move up the career ladder. Companies have also benefited from a better trained and skilled workers while service buyers benefit from the more professional workforce. Despite this, we must acknowledge that the wages in these PWM sectors need to commensurate with the skills and essential services provided by our workers. I applaud the announcement made by our Deputy Prime Minister recently to enhance the wages of our nurses and other healthcare workers, such as the support care staff. This move is to be commended and underlines the important work of our healthcare workers. On this note, I would like to call upon all the stakeholders involved in the PWM to take a hard look on the value of the jobs provided by our essential service workers and consequently increase PWM wages so that all Singaporean workers are uplifted. The reality is that in increasing the wages of our essential workers, consumers may have to pay more for their services. This is never an easy call to make, but it is an important step towards a fairer and more enlightened society, where we will ensure that all workers can live with dignity. To ease the initial transition, I would like to call on the government to consider a form of transitional support to help service buyers in the interim as we adjust the wages of our essential workers to adequately acknowledge the value of their work to our society. It's also timely that we look into other sectors where the PWM could benefit our workers. Just last month, it was announced that the PWM has been expanded to the waste management sector. NTUC had lobbied hard for the expansion into this sector and engaged associations and relevant government bodies to make this happen. This is an important step in recognizing the efforts of around 3,000 unsung heroes. And as the chair of the tripartite cluster for waste management, I look forward to continue with stakeholders to deliberate a PWM for this sector. NTUC is also constantly looking at other sectors to cover more workers under PWM. In 2019, it was announced that the pest management sector will be subsumed under the Environmental Services Industry Transformation Map in the hopes of transforming and uplifting the sector to provide good and sustainable jobs to Singaporeans. This marks a step in the right direction in acknowledging the integral role pest management plays in safeguarding public health, in providing essential services such as preventing the spread of dengue, rodents, and pest infestations. Despite this, more needs to be done as the sector is faced with many of the same challenges as that of other outsourced sectors, such as stagnating wages, lack of manpower, and poor public perceptions. For the industry to meet the rising demand and expectation of service standards for services, there is a need to build a strong and skilled professional local workforce. In the labour movement's interactions on the ground, we have also found that the workers in the strata management sector take on an important and demanding task of managing estates and providing all the conducive and safe environment for us to work and play, and the duties include control, administration, maintenance, and management of common property for the benefit of all. In 2019, the Facilities Management Implementation Committee was formed, comprising tripartite representatives to develop and implement strategies to create a more dynamic and professional industry. The Facilities Management Skills Framework was launched in September of last year to provide the industry with information of the occupations, skills, and competency, and the possible career pathways available. The development of the FMC accreditation is also underway, which will encourage higher management competency and skills